Hey, welcome back. Susan and Jim here, and we want to continue the conversation that we started, actually a few podcasts ago, about communication. How to really have effective communication and how to turn an adversary into an ally. So, how are you today?
Good.
That was an opening conversation. Because it's always good to ask questions of like how, what, when, where. Those are good like starters for conversations. So, how do you feel about talking about defensiveness today?
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that, yeah.
You know what's really cool is the way that we've been doing this is the first key is identifying self-responsibility, taking self-responsibility. The second key is that whole scope of feelings, where there is just so many feelings. It's wonderful and amazing and kind of mind-boggling all at the same time to see how many things there are, words to express feelings. The third one is then once you know that you have these feelings, you want to be responsible for yourself. It's like the sequence in which they happen, the sequence of feelings. Because we have primary feelings and we have secondary feelings. And the primary feelings are really what's going on with hurt and fear and physical pain, emotional pain. But the secondary feelings of anger, defensiveness, frustration are so strong that they happen in such a quick sequence that they usually dominate anything that's going on. So that's the sequence, which led us into dealing with anger, because we had those two questions pop up. When you're starting to feel angry, start to watch yourself of who's hurt me and what am I afraid of. And when you can answer those are really getting you at your primary feelings. And then last week we introduced I language, the capital letter I. You know, I feel grateful that you are my husband.
I'm grateful you're my wife.
Thank you, honey. And what really happens is we use this I language, especially when it comes into if you feel you've been hurt or slighted, you've been embarrassed, all those types of things, rather than you did this to me. Because one of the number one rules of self-responsibility is you're responsible for your own feelings and your own actions. And in speaking in I language, when you immediately start off a conversation with you, what happens?
People get defensive.
Exactly. And the doors close. The conversation wants to just kind of like stop.
Conversation at that point is over, and the person who just had you directed at them goes on the defensive to dig their heels in and defend their position.
Yes.
And rebut anything that's coming out of your mouth at that point. And a prime example, many years ago, this young lady worked for me, and a phone call came in and it wasn't handled properly, and some information was lost. So when I came back into the office, I started talking to her about it, and I could see that she was immediately becoming defensive. And I said, hey, listen, I'm not reprimanding you right now. I'm just teaching you. And that's how I want you to take it, because it's, all we want to do, come out on the other side of this, is that we don't miss anything when a call comes in like that, because it's important. So open the doors back up to communication and your heart, and let's finish this conversation so that next time around it's a non-issue because you handle it.
That is such a great example, because that is really what happens. I'm just going to use my little cheat sheet for a minute, because defensiveness is very powerful and it is very destructive. And immediately what it is, it's as though you want to protect yourself from the primary feelings that are happening, which is fear and hurt.
Yeah.
You know, And you described it a great way when we were talking about what we were going to talk about. And you said that it was, how'd you word that? It was so good.
At that point, all meaningful conversation stops.
Mm-hmm.
And the other person simply is defending their position, right or wrong.
Right.
At that point.
Right.
And
right.
so any further conversation is meaningless because nothing will be achieved.
No, nothing. Yeah, that is just so good. It's interesting too, when you talked about that example and with the young woman that worked in your office, you could sense, feel, and recognize that she was becoming defensive. What were some of the symptoms that you noticed that gave you the signal that, defensiveness is rearing its ugly little head?
The smile ran away from her lips.
Okay, yeah.
Her eyes narrowed, and she kind of leaned forward a little bit in a kind of like,
Yeah.
position without the elbows.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, it was obvious that she was defensive.
Right.
And she didn't need to be, because I was simply training her. I was,
Right.
teaching her.
Exactly.
And that's how I wanted it to come across. And I wanted to make sure at that point that she understood, I'm just teaching you.
Yeah.
I'm not,
Right.
this isn't a verbal beat down at
Right.
all.
Right.
And it's not meant to be.
And in work, that's a great way to be able to do it, especially, when you're in business and you're interacting with somebody and you start to feel that they're becoming defensive. Here's a really important thing for you to do. Start to recognize those things that Jim described. Now, they may be completely different signs. They may be, you start to see a little gritting of the teeth.
Well,
or anything.
Anybody is going to know instantly
Yes.
when the other person
It's true.
gets on the defensive.
Yeah.
We don't need to tell you what the signs are. Especially if it's somebody that you know quite well.
Oh,
Even
yeah.
if you don't know them quite well.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a clerk at the cleaners. Maybe it's the mechanic at the garage.
Yeah.
And, you can recognize immediately when they're on the defensive, and at that point, revisit how you're delivering this info.
Excellent.
Revisit how you're delivering
Yes.
the info that you want to
Yes.
convey to them, and so that they're not defensive, they are, they're taking it in.
Right.
They're receiving it,
Right.
and yeah, we can do that. We'll implement that.
Yeah.
We'll make that happen.
That is so excellent, because that is the shift. And you're right. It is hard to describe sometimes in words, but you do, I know, I like you, and you guys out there, you can tell when somebody's starting to become defensive when you're talking with them, whether it's professionally or personally. If we're having a discussion, I can immediately tell if you start to become defensive even before you become defensive. Of course, that's because we've lived together for 31, almost 31 years. But you do start to, it's like sensing an energy that starts to come out from somebody. So not only is the person, when we're talking about defensiveness, you as an individual start to recognize what happens to you when you start to feel defensive. Do you want to feel like you're putting that football helmet on and you're getting into that, going to attack mode? Do you want to withdraw and just be very snippy? But it has to do a lot with attitude, because attitude really shifts. And it really is, when you say come back and circle around, you as the one that's delivering the information, how are you delivering the information? So not only if you're receiving this, start to recognize what's going on and say you're on the receiving end and I'm starting to feel defensive. I can actually stop the conversation and say, wow, okay, hold on. I notice I'm starting to really feel defensive, and I don't want to be defensive because I want to hear what it is you want to tell me. So can we take a break or revisit how we're going to just deliver the information? It's okay, because I want to hear it. Remember, some of the rules we talked about in I language is we are on the same side. Say what you mean, believe what you hear, we're on the same side. So, especially in a relationship, that is very helpful. If I start to become defensive.
Yeah, we all probably, we don't anymore, but as we were growing up, maturing, you have one or two friends, one for sure, where they go on the defensive, kind of like knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
To go on the defensive almost immediately, anytime you're not saying what they want to hear. And dealing with them will require some finesse. But you have to stick to your guns with regards to whatever it is you're telling them. Usually it's a no with regards to something. And they don't want to hear no, because in the past it's been easy to bully you, manipulate you into a yes. And the minute you start saying no, they're going to get on the defensive right away and the offensive to make you conform to what they want.
Yeah.
And the secret of that is that you remain calm and just say, no, that's not going to work for me, you know. And then when you get the retort of, look at all these things I've done for you, you know, and you can say, yeah, and I've been appreciative of all of that.
Yes, yeah.
Every time, very appreciative. But at this point, that's not going to work for me.
Yeah.
And you don't really need to say anymore, because you don't need to explain it. And that's not going to work for me. And it may go on a little while longer, or not, or they may, you know, say a few colorful sentences, you know, with a raised voice, and then leave.
Yeah.
And if they do, they do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But at that moment and that point, you're teaching them how you want to be treated.
Right.
And how you're going to deliver info, like it or not.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And it's not easy. But after you do it once or twice with that person, they'll come around to know that you cannot be pushed around, bullied, manipulated anymore. They may not like it, but I'll tell you one thing, they'll respect you.
Yeah.
You know?
That is so, so true. You know, last week we actually called the podcast, you know, learning a new language. Because that's what I-language is. I-language is being able to stand up for yourself and implement those previous, you know, keys of taking the responsibility. What are you feeling? What sequence did it happen to you in? And did you become angry about it? And if so, now how am I going to communicate that with you? So we have a great term that we also use called carefrontation. Because a carefrontation is when you really care for someone and you want to talk to them about something. So that is kind of like when you know that you're going to talk to somebody about something. And then the other way to handle the other thing that happens is when you don't know, but all of a sudden you're talking with somebody, and out of the clear blue you start to realize, wow, I'm really sensing that this person is becoming defensive. And you know, one of the ways to handle that, to help kind of like bring it maybe to their attention in a way other than, oh my gosh, you're becoming so defensive about this. You know, that just is going to make it more so, is to really just pause and say, wow, I'm really starting to feel some energy around what's being talked about. And I'm kind of getting myself a little defensive, and I certainly don't want us both to be defensive about it. So I'm going to take a breath. Let's revisit this, because I'd love to get it dealt with. I'd love to get it dealt with. And one of my other favorite phrases that you used is that just doesn't work for me.
Right.
That was one of the greatest phrases my sponsor taught me early in my sobriety. When somebody wanted me to do something, or they asked, can you do this or do that, and blah, blah, blah. I said, no, that really doesn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so hard for me to do that, because I always wanted to, one of the 9 stepping stones, I always wanted to explain.
Yeah.
I wanted to just explain why I couldn't do it or why I didn't want to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's especially hard if you're a people pleaser.
Yes.
You want to say yes to everybody, and you don't want anybody to dislike you and or be, angry with you. And so it's just easier to say, yeah, I'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
But after a while, no, you're important too.
Yeah.
You matter.
Yes.
And it's a no.
Yeah.
It's a no.
That is so good. I want you to really hear that again. You matter.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of us, we are all, our belief is we are all children of God.
That's right.
And He made every single one of us so special.
Mm-hmm.
We are all a unique combination of ununique feelings and thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Because God created them, but they're put together in just a special way. And we do matter. What I have to say, what I feel does matter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's up to me to take self-responsibility to deliver my feelings, my thoughts to you in a way that is really productive.
Mm-hmm.
Because the goal with all relationships, whether they be personal or whether they be professional, is that they grow a stronger bond.
Mm-hmm.
When I did this when I worked for Levi's, I developed lifelong friendships. And I developed really effective working relationships with my clients. Professionally, we have an amazing marriage. We have both done this with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when I start to feel defensive, one of the biggest things I can do is just listen to what's going on.
Yeah.
And it'll work itself out. So I think it's getting time for us to wrap this up, because this is a great subject that ties in with everything else. So in defensiveness, remember what it is it's really a defense mechanism that wants, in many ways, it wants to act as proving you are right in whatever it was. It also wants to protect you from when it feels like you're being hurt or attacked.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a combination. And it really, defensiveness, really, bottom line, keeps people away from you.
Mm-hmm.
And it closes the doors. And it does not open the door to be having intimate, healthy, productive relationships. Mm-hmm. So with that, I'm feeling real good today. No defensiveness.
That's right. Me
no
too.
Defensiveness. And it's great because we talk about things.
Yeah.
So that's what we want you guys to do, is be able to talk about things so that you can manage your life. What's this called? Managing your life. Managing Life 101. And if you don't manage your life, it's going to take over and manage you. Bye-bye.
Bye.